And what's up? Welcome in Thursday episode of GC Live. I'm Wes Mitchell. Welcome in. Hope you're all having a great day. Joined now, I believe, by Mike Uva. Give me a thumbs up, Mikey. You good to go? Mike Uva hopping on with us here for Thursday afternoon episode, I should say. Easy for me to say. Mike, how we doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I don't like these full service at car washes, Wes. That's why I was running a little behind. Every person wants to get full service now and get their friggin' thing vacuumed before they actually go in, and then you're stuck in line there. So felt like it's a nice day. Let's get a car wash. But no, 8 friggin' people in front of me. They all have to get the full service. They can't vacuum the car themselves. So that's what really grinds my gears today. I feel like I'm on an episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah, and but so did you get the Jeep clean? Is it looking good?
Oh, the exterior, you know. Go vacuum it yourself. That's what I'd say to those people in front of me, because there's only one friggin' thing to go down and they have to wait.
Mike, you're fired up today, man. I like the energy. Hey, Frank Martin was fired up last night. I'm telling you, man, I was lucky enough to be here when Steve Spurrier was the coach. So you never knew what you were going to get from a Steve Spurrier press conference. But Frank Martin has been on another level this week. From talking about duck, duck, goose to if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands or whatever he was talking about yesterday. He's been on another level, man. But the Gamecock men's basketball team, and that's what we're primarily going to talk about here to start today. They've been on another level as well as far as the on court. Just I don't know, man, efficiency, level of play, however you want to say it. Mike, you've been there pretty much all year, man. Is this team, are they rounding into form? Is that how you would say it?
I think 2 things. I think the biggest thing for them is the fact that Frank is back to being Frank. I mean, he sets the tone. When those guys commit to South Carolina, they know what they're getting themselves into. Frank's going to be loud. Frank's going to be passionate. Frank's going to be in their face, and that's what they signed up for. Unfortunately, last season, that wasn't the case because he went through COVID twice, and it was evident. It was evident that he just wasn't himself. He had alluded to it multiple times, whether it be towards the end of the season or even at times going into this season, that if he could have done it all over again, he probably would have removed himself to at least not coach the rest of the year and then return this season because he just wasn't himself. So I think it starts with him. He needs to be able to set the tone. And it's not just setting the tone in practice or on game day. It's also setting the tone in press conferences. I mean, those players, they're not stupid. They know what's being said. They keep up with everything. They have their iPhones. They know what's going on in those press conferences. And what Frank says is basically another way to reiterate to his players how he truly feels. So I think that's important. I think the other part, too, is this. You had 9 newcomers, 8 new scholarship players. It was going to take some time for them to mesh together. Frank mentioned last night that they reamped the offense, especially the half-court offense, and have been able to make some adjustments to fit the skill set that this team has because there's just obviously so many new faces. It just took them a little bit longer to figure out, okay, what is the best way to attack this? And I think we've seen that not just last night, but these last 4 games in which South Carolina has won 4 conference games for the first time since 2018. And now they're going to try to accomplish something that they haven't done since the Final Four year, which is being able to win 5 conference games in a row. So tremendous opportunity for them coming up on Saturday in Tuscaloosa against Alabama, trying to earn that outright 5th spot in the SEC. And, they're going to have a good opportunity to finish the season off strong. But just like we've been saying, Wes, these last couple of games, as cliche as it comes down to saying it, it's truly just a one game at a time mentality. And that's what they've been doing. And now they're in a position now to go to Tuscaloosa, be able to really improve that net and KenPom ranking because you're going against a top 25 team on the road. And when you're trying to factor in about all those rankings and this and that, road games are very, very important, especially against good teams that are in the top 25.
Yeah, man. And the whatever you want to call them, like the analytics-based numbers to this point have not been very kind to the Gamecocks at all. You look at, the net so far. I assumed beating LSU was going to put a dent in that thing. It really didn't. But you look, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but this Alabama game, that's a place Frank Martin and these guys have really struggled to win at. You look at what Alabama has done this year, similar records, but I was looking at some of the teams Alabama has beaten this year. Very nice resume for those guys. But on the other hand, if South Carolina can go win this game, I would imagine that is maybe where you start to see a little bit of a jump in the numbers for South Carolina as far as those analytics-based rankings. And right now, I think we probably talked about it last time you were on, man. Short of beating Auburn, which is just going to be very difficult to do anyway. I mean, they're pretty much, in my opinion, going to need to win every other game that they play heading into the SEC tournament and put themselves in a position. Now, if you could get to 5th, it sets up pretty well for you at the tournament, because if you're top 4, I always thought sometimes if you needed wins in the SEC tournament, being top 4 was a little bit of a disadvantage because it takes away a more winnable game at the beginning. If you can be 5th, then you get to play. You don't have the double bye, but you play a team that is a lesser opponent.
No, and I think that's something that at this point South Carolina needs to be able to get those extra games. Now, do they want to be the team that has to play the play-in game to get into the next one? No. I mean, that's essentially what it is when you finish as low as we've seen in the past. Sometimes with South Carolina, they play that extra game. But, I mean, it's obviously more beneficial to finish the season off on a hot note. And on a high note at that, playing hot basketball and going into the SEC tournament. So you look at it, and I hate doing this frigging game because it's, the what ifs and it's the popsicle headaches because you start playing out the scenarios. But, I will go against what I say, which is, I do not like doing this, but I will for the sake of this conversation, because they have to. They want any postseason aspirations, whether it be, obviously they can win the SEC tournament, but that's going to be very difficult. But they have to be able to beat Alabama. It comes down to that. They have to be able to beat Alabama. You beat Alabama and you're able to beat Missouri. Even if you lose to Auburn, you're going to finish the year with 19 wins. Now, that's if they don't make up that SC State game. I just don't see how that's going to be possible just because of the timing standpoint. I just don't think it's going to happen. And even if they play SC State, yes, based on the scenario we're talking about, that would put them in a position to be able to earn their 20th win in the regular season. But even at that point, yeah, I get it. 20 wins looks better than 19, but at the end of the day, it's really not going to make that much of a difference. And for those of you that did not hear the press conference at the beginning of the week from Frank, we put a little story up on Gamecock Central about it. The challenging part about playing that makeup game, whether it be against SC State or anyone really for that matter, you're going to have to lose 2 days the following week, depending on when you play, because that's just how it breaks down from the NCAA with the hours and how many hours you're allowed to do certain things. Like, all right, you have the game made there. So for South Carolina, their focus right now, and it should be, is on the SEC, finishing these 3 games off strong. So if they are able to do that, I feel like from an NIT standpoint, you put yourself in a great position, especially if you can be able to get one of those wins in the SEC tournament, but you're also knocking on the door, potentially making it to the big dance. And I think the challenging thing about it, Wes, is that we see so many times we see teams who have no business whatsoever making the NCAA tournament, but they win their conference tournament. And as a result, an extra team, and sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3, they go into the tournament. And because of that, those teams that are on the bubble, sometimes South Carolina, sometimes you're in a situation, if you're South Carolina, you're one of those last 4 teams potentially in, you have some of these other teams win, that could bump you out. So it's tough to look at it and say, all right, they have to do this and that and everything's good, because you just truly never know, just because that is part of the madness with March.
Yeah, I think fans do sort of like to look at it almost in a vacuum. You're looking at it from the perspective of your team. And it is nice to be able to say, well, if we win four more games, win 5 more, whatever. But it is very much going to be determined, because you're talking about a thin margin between those final teams. And then, as you said, man, a team that maybe was not expected to go, they win that tournament, boom, there goes 1 spot. So there could be a year where you get a little bit lucky, maybe all the favorites that are going to go anyway win their tournaments. And then maybe a couple extra teams from the sort of mid, the majors go, or then other times, maybe it's a small bubble and teams get left out that most years, like no given one year is exactly the same. So
Yeah.
that's you're at the point, if you're
And
South Carolina, you're gonna want and need every bit of luck you can get down the stretch, I think.
and Wes, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm sure a lot of people have gone back already and have looked at that 2015, 2016 season when there was absolutely no question that South Carolina got snubbed. No freaking question. They got snubbed and they got left out of the tournament. I say that because you look at how they finished the year. I believe they had 25 wins that season, 25-9. The challenging and 11-7 in conference play. The challenging part when you compare that is when you look at 2015 through 2016, that season, and you look at now 2021 to 2022, just look at how much better the conference has got. I mean, the SEC for a long time was just considered to be a football and baseball conference. Basketball for women's, of course, but from a basketball standpoint, no one really looked at it that way. But if you look at the talent that has come out of the SEC over the last couple of years, it is absolutely ridiculous. And you look at some of the coaches they have in the conference as well. So I say that because that has to be something you take into consideration. That human element, when you are looking at the resumes, it's a little bit different now. If that 2015, 2016 USC team did what they did and you put them in this year, finish the same record, they're in easily. There's no question they're in easily. I think times have changed a little bit. So I think it is important to realize that it is extremely difficult to look at, okay, the last couple of years, okay, maybe 6 SEC teams made it this year. 7 teams made it, only 3 or 4 or 5. It's just difficult to do that because, as you said, you have to look at things in a vacuum because every season's different. And the reality is right now the SEC is playing at such a high level that will help South Carolina, but you have to be able to get that signature win. I think that's the big thing, Wes. They don't have that signature win quite yet. And if they're able to beat Alabama on the road, I mean, top 25 team, a team that you're playing at their house. I mean, I think that would be the game. Obviously, is that beating Kentucky? No. But I think that would be the signature win that would help them to make a little bit more of a case. They don't have that right now. They don't have that signature win.
And it is a place they have really struggled to win
Yeah.
at as well. So add that, not that the committee or the numbers or any of that, none of those people care about that. But as far as kind of what the win would mean for South Carolina, I'll add in that as well, because it would mean you had a team that was mentally tough enough to go in there and win against a program that, for whatever reason, you kind of see it across sports. Sometimes it's just a bad matchup with a certain program. Sometimes you look at it and you say, wow, we always seem to match up well with that team. With South Carolina and Alabama, particularly South Carolina at Alabama in men's basketball, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know it has not been pretty as far as Carolina going in there and getting wins. Before we go any further, I got to tell you about our presenting sponsor. It is Clint Hammond. You see a smiling face right there on the screen. NMLS number 71597. C Hammond, that's the letter C, Hammond at mortgagenetwork.com is how you can get in touch with Clint. 803-576-4450, or just head on over to clinthammond.com if you're in the market for a new home. Maybe you want to buy a new home. Maybe you want to refinance, save yourself some money each month. Give Clint a shout. Let's dive a little bit more, Mike, into the actual game yesterday. What would you say, a wall-to-wall, a wire-to-wire win for South Carolina, and that they, after not leading at all the last time these two teams faced earlier in the year, South Carolina flips the script. They're leading throughout. It felt kind of like they were in control throughout the game. They played a great first half. You were kind of waiting to see, does Mississippi State make that run? Basketball's a game of runs, but Mississippi State, I felt like there were a couple of moments where they chipped away, but the Gamecocks had answers. And dude, Couisnard, I mean, I think we always knew if this team was going to make a run, you were going to need these veterans. You were going to need Keyshawn Bryant to play well. You're going to need Couisnard to play well. You're going to need them to sort of kind of just be the energy, be the push for this team. And the announcers made a great point, man. Kuznard has a look in his eyes right now. Like he's confident, he's focused, and he's been really, really fun to watch, man.
55 points in his last 2 games. I'm sure getting left out of any type of considerations for any SEC accolades last week definitely put an extra chip on his shoulder going into last night. But one of my favorite stats, because I really think it shows a strong representation of what this team's all about and what this team needs in order to be successful. When Keyshawn Bryant or Jermaine Couisnard scores at least one of them scores at least 10 points or more, South Carolina is 15-2 this season. Both guys scored in double digits last night. So, point being is this. When one of those guys is able to do what I think going into the season, what we expected them to do, they're able to get things done. So, I don't think it's any secret the fact that South Carolina, of those 19 wins this year, 15 of them have come when one of those guys scores in double digits. And you got to go back into early in the year. I mean, there were times where, Keyshawn obviously missed the first 5 games due to a team suspension. And then Jermaine, he was dealing with a lot going back at home with the loss of a dear friend who, as we've learned, because it's been well documented, then obviously the struggles that his mother's been going through. I mean, he's been going through a lot. And I don't think people truly understood the reasoning behind why Frank decided not to play him. I believe it was that Arkansas game, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But I know it was one of those games not too long ago. And Frank said he needs to be able to be at peace. He needs to find that peace. Well, I think Jermaine's been able to find that peace. And I think it just shows what he's capable of doing when he does find that peace. And then Keyshawn, I think, look, I've said this before. I think Keyshawn was just trying to do too much. I think he was trying to do way too much. I think he was trying to impress some NBA scouts by trying to maybe settle for some more jump shots than he typically has in the past. And I think he was also struggling to make that adjustment of when do I attack the rim and when do I settle for a jumper, because teams started playing a little bit different because they respect the hell out of his athleticism. So I think it was one of those things where, at times Keyshawn may have pulled up a little too soon to take that shot because, like I said, maybe he just felt, hey, teams are playing me a little bit different. But at the same time, too, NBA scouts want to see me be able to bury, that 10 to 12 foot jumper. He's playing like himself now. He's not thinking and he's just freaking playing. Now, has there been some of games, especially during this 4-game winning streak, that he hasn't been shooting that well? Yeah. But at the same time, too, you can just see the difference in aggression, attacking the hoop. And when he attacks the hoop, even if he's not the one shooting it, how quickly that paint collapsed and he's able to dish it out to the outside. And guys like Eric Stevenson, James Reese, we're seeing these guys be able to bury those shots on the outside. So, it goes hand in hand. I loved the ball movement last night. I feel like that's something that for South Carolina early on in the year, it was very slow, especially early on in conference play. It just seemed slow at times. It seemed like it was, you kind of knew what was going to happen. They'd maybe settle for a 3. They wouldn't get the ball inside, as Frank alluded to, about being important to their offense in order to have success. So just a great job last night. Just a great job. And like you mentioned, I mean, guys like Keyshawn and Jermaine, they've really stepped up. And the other seniors as well, James Reese and Eric Stevenson.
Yeah, and man, like you said, the ball movement, the making the extra pass, sort of not settling for early shots. I'll tell you what, man, I like watching Taequan Woodley play. Like I look at this kid and I'm like, I mean, as someone who doesn't really, I can't really analyze the game of basketball from an X's and O's standpoint, so I don't pretend I can. But I do know athletes, man, and I look at Woodley and I'm like, how many big men do you see, especially come in as freshmen, and they just don't look very coordinated? And then I look at Woodley and I'm like, this kid has some skill to him. He has some finesse for a big guy. He's also willing to push a guy around a little bit too when he needs to. It got a little bit chippy there in the second half, but I like what that guy brings to the table. If he can follow that up, and I know freshmen, it's always up and down with freshmen, but he's another one I'm looking at, man. If he can build off of that and keep giving South Carolina good minutes, that makes them all the more dangerous. Not that he's going to be carrying the way, but I mean, he had a couple passes last night that were just beautiful, I thought.
And what really impresses me with that young man, he's obviously going through something that is very special with being able to have the birth of his child. He must have a tremendous, tremendous support. I can't even speak right now. Support cast. I can't freaking speak right now. I think it's time to get me a drink. The group that's supporting him, because to be a student athlete, number one, to be a student athlete in the middle of a stretch like South Carolina is in right now, and you're trying to be as perfect as you can, knowing that just one loss could ultimately make or break you. And then you're juggling the birth of your child. It just goes to show the maturity of this young man, that he's able to go out there and take care of business when he's on the court. Because at the end of the day, what he's juggling back at home is much, much more important than anything that's going on the court. But he's been a professional. He showed up, and since he showed up, he's just been absolutely incredible. But like I said, going through having a child these last couple of weeks and to be able to be back on the court playing at the level that he's playing has just been absolutely insane. And when you look at teams that have been successful under Frank Martin, they've had that big guy, especially on the defensive end, that's just had that has that presence. And you think of a guy like Chris Silva, you think of a guy like Mike Cozart, you think about these guys that just have that presence in the paint. A guy like Wildens Levesque, he definitely put some muscle on in the offseason. I just feel like, unfortunately, it just has not been able to come all together. He's had games, he's had moments where he has shown sparks. And I don't think he's too far off from being able to take that next step, but it just hasn't clicked fully, consistently enough. And so to see a guy like Woodley be able to step up and play in the manner in which he's doing, it's something that South Carolina desperately needed. And it's just a lot of fun to watch. He's an easy guy to get behind because you can see the effort. You can see the effort every freaking night, and especially on the defensive end. I mean, he doesn't have to go out there. Notice that. He doesn't have to go out there, score 10, 15 points. If you're making a difference down to the paint and you're just making things just a living freaking nightmare for the other team, that's exactly what South Carolina needs, and he's been able to do it.
Yeah, final thing I want to hit on this game, man. Again, South Carolina defeats Mississippi State 66-56. Honestly, the game was I would say it was South Carolina won the game by more than the score kind of indicated as far as how it flowed, in my opinion. But the great Frank Martin teams play really, really good defense. And I think we have seen this team also just look more and more comfortable playing within Frank's philosophy. While, yesterday, the just sort of switching back and forth from zone to man, we've seen them as the year has progressed. I know Frank wants to be a man defensive team. Like, that's his MO, but we've seen them lean more into the zone. And now, Mike, you're seeing them against State. They were sort of flipping back and forth from it. I thought they kept them on their heels. They kept them off balance. And this is a team that started to look like a Frank Martin team defensively as well.
And that's actually the exact question that I asked Frank after the game. I said, Frank, we know that, the old cliche in sports, not just basketball, how teams often take the identity of their coach and take on the identity of their coach. And for a while, we just didn't see it with this team, or at least we just didn't see it consistently enough across the board. And give Frank credit. Frank deferred the credit to his players, saying that's just the personality of these guys. I think back to last night in the second half, there was a little pushing and shoving going on. And notice how quickly just a group of Gamecock players that were on the court came over to stand up for Woodley. I mean, it just speaks volumes of what this team's all about and what this team needed to be all about. Maybe it took them a little bit longer just because there's so many new faces and, trying to mesh, trying to gel. I mean, I think back to going into probably going late August, September, hearing some of the guys on the team just talking about how they just clicked and how they gelled well together. I don't think that's changed by any means. I just think playing together, because it was just so many new faces. And, for a lot of these guys, it's the first time, maybe in their careers that they've had to be they're being asked to play the defense of playing defense in which there's a style of aggression in just the manner in which Frank Martin wants you to play defense. So I think maybe that's something that slows down some of these guys when they come in here. I don't know. But we do notice, though, once they're able to figure that out, and we've seen this with Frank Martin teams, go back over the last couple of years. They always, it seems like, obviously last year, throw that out the window because that's tough to make any type of comparison because Frank just wasn't himself. Just notice how these teams under Frank have really started to find their stride somewhere between that middle of conference play towards the end, and they start to get that momentum. Now, I say all that, and I know probably there's some people in this group chat or just watching. I say the group chat, people on the side, but anyone watching, I'm sure some of them would say, well, where was it at the beginning of the season? And unfortunately, some of those games at the beginning of the year, historically for South Carolina, have kept them out, despite how strong they play towards the end of the season. If South Carolina doesn't make the tournament, that's going to be a large part with it. I mean, it goes hand in hand with it, but that doesn't mean you can't appreciate this group of guys that have come together, 9 new faces, 8 new scholarship guys, and put something together that a lot of people didn't expect them to do, which is be able to finish as well as they are on the verge to. I mean, they were picked 12th to finish in the SEC. Right now, they're tied for 5th in the conference, having an opportunity to either finish in that 5 or 6 spot. So, they've done a lot. They've overcome a lot, but I know for a lot of people, it's make the tournament, make the NIT, make something, or else, a lot of people are going to look at this season as a fail still.
Well, I think it's because of this has been the program's MO lately. Yep. Other than I'll throw out the COVID year like last year when just everything was off, but the last few years before that, going all the way back to right after the Final Four, this is kind of the MO. It's lose a couple of games early on that you shouldn't, come into your own, starting to look like you want to look, have some momentum, but it just not be quite enough. And I think that's where the fan frustration largely comes from. I think some of it is tied in with the fact that on paper, South Carolina doesn't recruit as well as a lot of other schools in the SEC. Now, what we also see from that, Mike, to your point, South Carolina consistently is picked towards the bottom in the East and then consistently outperforms what they're picked as because Frank actually does do a good job, I think, of evaluating talent compared to, where these guys are ranked at. But the other part of that is, fans want you to go to a championship or go to have a chance to win championships by just being in the tournament. So, man, I think you look and I see all sides of this thing. Like I see why fans are frustrated, but I mean, I've always thought you should judge coaches also by the way their teams improve as a year goes on. I know, Mike, you're the son of a coach. Like I feel like the mark of a great coach is a coach that takes what he has and then sees it out on the court or the field, whatever surface you're playing on. And we all know what you see in practice doesn't directly correlate to what you see when you're facing other teams under the lights with fans in the stands. I respect coaches that look at what they have and have the mental capacity and just honestly, the guts to say, I've got to change this. I've got to change that. And we see that consistently with Frank Martin teams. If they could eliminate one of these early losses each year, they would be a team nobody wants to face in the tournament. I firmly believe that. These Frank Martin teams can make a run if they can just get in.
I was reaching over, a little dusty right now. Whew, a lot of dust. Talking about making those adjustments. One of my favorite quotes in all of sports that my college coach used to say. I have it on a plaque from Mike Tyson. I don't know. We'll try if we can make this work. Everyone has a game plan until they get punched in the face. So I think it's very fitting, and you can make this comparison to even Gamecock football a little bit with Marcus Satterfield and the offense. as coaches, the great coaches are able to adjust. They're not one-trick ponies. They don't just go out there and do one thing. You have to be able to adjust for what you have, right? It's like it's like baking a cake, and you don't have all the ingredients the way that you have it maybe in the past how you made a cake, right? You have to work with it. Maybe the store's closed, but you have to make a cake with what you have. So I think with Frank, and I made that comparison to Marcus Satterfield, I feel like, you have that game plan, you have this vision, but unfortunately, as that quote says from Mike Tyson, you get punched in the face and you have to be able to adjust. I think Frank has demonstrated that. I think this team has demonstrated that. Why it took them maybe a little bit longer to get to this point, I don't know. I don't have that answer. And that might be a good question to ask Frank, the next time we have a chance. I think he might be speaking. I don't think he's actually speaking tomorrow. I think the players will speak tomorrow via Zoom, and then Frank will be speaking either Monday or Tuesday. So that might be an opportunity for us to ask him that. But I think the biggest thing is with this team is, we've seen just year after year, they just show fight at the end. It makes it exciting. I mean, it's just, the Coastal Carolina game, I'm not dismissing it altogether. No Jermaine Couisnard. No Jermaine Couisnard in that game. Keyshawn Bryant suspended still. If they play Coastal today, do you think that's the same result? I mean, no. But that's the thing that, you can't say the games at the beginning of the year don't matter. To me, and I've said this before about football as well, when you think about the college football playoffs, I feel like the games towards the end of the season, you should put more stock into it, because that gives you a better representation of the team that you have, especially heading into any type of postseason play, especially if you're trying to determine who should make the NCAA tournament out of the 68 teams. And obviously there's some, automatic bids there. But I think with South Carolina, they have certainly shown a lot of fight. I think this is a group, too, that has a big chip on their shoulder, Wes. I think a lot of them are pissed off at some of the things that are being said about their coach. They're not, like I said, they're not dumb. They have a cell phone. They know what's being said. They see stuff on social media. I'm sure it's pissing them off. And on top of that, you have guys that are seniors, too, and they know that this is their last hurrah. So I think it's a combination of a couple things, but it's really good to see these guys sticking it out together. And if Frank is back next season, as at least on the contract, that's the game plan as of right now. Whether Gigi comes in or not, you do have a lot of talented seniors who are capable of coming back next season if they make that choice, because, they have that. Some of these guys have that fifth-year option because of how things played out with that COVID season.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with all of this. But here's the thing, man. I'm curious to see, and like you said, I agree. The committee, if you go firing into the end of the year and you've won 6 of 7, 6 of 8, 7 of 9 games or something like that. Not that the early season games should not matter, but you do. If I have two teams and they're pretty much equal otherwise, and one's going one direction in terms of they're playing great basketball down the stretch and they have become a really good team, and the other has floundered, and has lost 6 of 10, I think you're going to the team that is playing great basketball at the end pretty much every single time. And I would be curious to see the fan. Some of this stuff is driven by fan sentiment. I will be curious to see the fan sentiment if South Carolina plays very well down the stretch, does not make the tournament. There's a lot of people who came into this year and it was tournament or bust, which I get it, but and this is not that argument of, well, who you're going to go get, because some people make that argument blindly anytime you talk about a coaching change. They say, well, who you're going to get? Well, in this case, though, it qualifies. Who are you going to go get that's better than Frank Martin? Because he's a dude. This guy can coach.
Yes.
If you can add the recruiting element, which is, I believe, ticking up, are you going to find better than Frank Martin?
Who's the real winner? Let me ask you this. And if you're listening at home, if you're in the chat section, drop this out there. I mean, maybe we're going to answer it before you send something in. But think about this. Based on where South Carolina is right now, they're on a 4-game winning streak. They're turning things around. They're ranked 5th right now, tied for the SEC in the conference at 5th with Alabama, who they're going to be playing on Saturday. Regardless of how things end this season, just seeing this fight, seeing how things have turned around, who is the real winner in all of this? Who's the real winner? Who's looking good right now? Think about that. Who's looking good? I don't even know if you know where I'm going with this, but who's looking good?
I'm curious.
It's Frank Martin. Because God forbid South Carolina does want to go in an opposite direction once April 1st rolls around and that buyout drops a little bit. You don't think Frank looks at this and goes out, when he's able to put himself out there for another team and say, hey, look what I did with the team that was picked to finish 12th in the conference, 9 new faces. This is how we started, and this is how we finished. We didn't make the tournament. We didn't make the NIT, but look at how we were able to turn things around with so many new faces. If I can do that with new faces, what can I do at a program that's going to give me a little bit more time to work at? So I honestly think the person that's sitting the prettiest right now isn't the university. Mm-hmm. It's Frank Martin. Frank Martin is in a great spot right now. So look, you don't like Frank Martin, that's fine. This isn't some Frank Martin PR rant that I'm going on. Just think about it. Think about it. You don't like Frank, that's fine. I'm not telling you to who to like. You have your reasons to be upset. I get that. But really think about this. How things are playing out right now, Frank is looking freaking pretty. He's the person that's probably going home each night. I know he's got a little stuffy nose, he said, but outside of that, he's probably the one that's going home sleeping the best out of anyone because he knows, hey, God forbid South Carolina wants to move on for me. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Because you know what? What I'm doing right now at South Carolina, especially towards the end, turning things around with so many new faces, there is definitely another school out there. I'm not saying necessarily a Power 5. Who knows? There's definitely another school out there saying, hey, shoot, we would love to have Frank Martin part of our staff. There's no question about it.
Well, there's a lot of good non-Power 5 jobs in basketball. There are going to be options out there. Craig says you're not going to get a better coach here at USC than Frank. So it's not that it's impossible. Like, you can roll that dice if you want to roll that dice, but the chances of it, in my opinion, are probably not high. Like, if you want to roll the dice and say we as an organization would rather take the chance to be great than sort of stay being like good and always. Other than last year, all of Frank's teams compete, man. They're going to compete. They're not going to embarrass you. They're going to be right there in the middle. They're going to fight it out. Are you going to make the tournament every year? Obviously not. Are you going to make the tournament every other year? Right now, no. But if the recruiting were to tick up just a bit, which it may be about to, I don't know if you can make that change right now, even if fans are sort of like sometimes fans get to the point after so long where they're just kind of like, well, they want something different. They want a different approach. Mm-hmm. They want to hear different cliches in a press conference as opposed to the same cliches. So, I get it. I get it completely. But you really don't want to look back, Mike, and be like, dang, we were patient as a fan base all that time, and then we pulled the plug right when it was about to turn for the better, when guys like Gigi Jackson were about to come.
And 2 things, Wes, about Frank. 1, I think some people assume if he's not here that it will be similar to kind of like, Will Muschamp, right? Oh, well, look, it worked out in football. It's not. Football and basketball just aren't the same. They're just not the freaking same. They're not the same. In basketball, it's just so freaking tough here. It really is. It really is challenging because you have Duke right up the road. You have North Carolina right up the road. You're in a tough spot from a recruiting standpoint. You are. And then obviously Kentucky's in your conference, and the conference itself is pretty good. I say that because I think when people look at that and they're like, all right, go out and get a coach, get someone younger, someone that it just doesn't work that way. It's just not the same in basketball. And the other thing I want to say, and I got to keep saying it because some people in their minds, I don't know what I need to do. Maybe I'll get a freaking shovel and smack someone over the head so they can get some common sense in them. Mike Boynton is not coming through those doors anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. He's comfortable and happy at Oklahoma State. Okay. That's not to say that down the road at some point, there could be an opportunity that presents itself where Boynton's like, you know what? Yeah, it's time to go home. First off, they have to offer him that. But number two, he's in a pretty good spot. Unfortunately, Oklahoma State, they're going through their NCAA violations, which he was not a part of. And unfortunately, the program has to deal with that from an NCAA tournament ban standpoint. But he's in a comfortable spot. He's in a comfortable spot. Why would you leave a spot like that? Oh, because it's his alma mater. Yeah, but have you seen how quickly people are ready to turn on it? Ask Ray Tanner. Ask Ray Tanner how quickly people turned on him because they're upset with certain things. Some stuff, you could hold him accountable for. He's the athletic director. I get that. But that stuff goes away pretty quickly. And I know he didn't necessarily go to USC, but I mean, shoot, he was the first person in USC baseball history to have his jersey retired. Do you think a lot of people care about that when they talk about arguments about, fire Ray or are upset with Ray? They don't care about that. If Mike Boynton came over here at some point, if things didn't go well, honeymoon phase goes out the window. So that's not to say that Boynton could not come back to Columbia West and be successful. But I think so many people just have in their mind, he's the solution. He could be the solution, but you need to be able to get him back here first. And I think if I'm him right now, I see how things are playing out. I'm comfortable. And Lake makes a good point. He's making $3 million. There's no reason you can have success out there. And then if an opportunity presents itself and you want to come back home to your alma mater, do it. But I think if I'm Boynton right now, shoot, I'm sitting pretty right now. I'm sitting pretty at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, the honeymoon phase can be short these days. I mean, even as we've seen a Final Four, it buys you about 4 years, and then people are quick. I mean, dude, even Shane Beamer in year one. I know it's a very, very tiny sliver of the fan base, but if you got on social media during some of those early season struggles, God, the amount of just negativity from some people. I mean, and I know that's not the administration. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is how the people signing your checks feel. Yep. But golly, college sports, any sports right now these days, the window of everybody loving you is a very, very short window. Mike, I want to talk a little bit about your latest venture with Marcus Lattimore. First, I want to tell everybody about one of our newest sponsors. It is Liberty Tax. You can overcome your taxiety. 803-462-5576. This is tax time. So you want to make sure that you get your taxes done by a professional so that you know that it's done correctly. The tax team at Liberty Tax locations right here in the Midlands will take care of you. That's Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia. 1123 South Lake Drive in Lexington, 7467 St. Andrews Road in Irmo, and then the new location at 551 St. Andrews Road, Columbia, 29210. They have virtual income tax prep or in-person tax prep. No matter what you do, though, either way, you're getting your taxes done professionally and done right. And right now, they're open evenings and weekends to make sure that whatever time you're at work, whatever time you have available, you can go get your taxes done. Mike, dude, Marcus Lattimore, your announcement that you had been teasing on Gamecock Central for some time, it goes out today, and the reaction I've seen online has been awesome. I think Marcus and the fan base have always had such a connection. There's always been such an appreciation for Marcus. Marcus said it himself. He had to take some time. I believe the way he phrased it was he needed to take some time in silence. He got out, found himself, has spent time, away from the Southeast where he grew up and spent his time, playing football, obviously at South Carolina. But I'll let you take it from there, Mike. Tell everybody about the newest venture between you and Marcus and how they can hear Marcus and what it means for Gamecock Central supporters.
Yeah, we're very excited for this. Marcus reached out to me about 4 or 5 weeks ago saying that he wanted to pass my name along and to someone. And, typically when Marcus does that, it's like, all right, am I even going to ask him who, and I get a phone call either later that day or the next day from a number out in Los Angeles. And I thought it was a telemarketer at first. I wasn't going to pick it up, but I picked it up. It was someone part of the Believe Network podcast platform. And they told me that Marcus was someone that they had reached out to about doing a Gamecock podcast. And if you're not familiar with Believe, it's BLEAV. They have over 400 podcasts with either current or former professional athletes, collegiate athletes. Former Gamecock Sean Smith is actually on there talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you want to listen to a former Gamecock, Deshaun Jackson's on there, Bill Polian, the NFL Hall of Fame GM. I mean, some really, really big name guys. So they must have not been able to find anyone else if they need me to be part of the show, because Marcus reached out to me and said that he wanted me to host it with him, and beyond honored. Very, 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 very special that he would have that trust in me. And, because of obviously my relationship with him, we were able to kind of talk things out and said, hey, look, we have a tremendous platform with me being over at Gamecock Central now. Believe was phenomenal with it. They're like, hey, you guys figure it out. Whatever you guys want to do, you guys can do with it. You can post it anywhere you want with our podcast and embed it anywhere. So, Marcus has been awesome about it. He's just like, Mike, you do your thing. He has that trust in me and feels like, we'll be able to really reach out to as many Gamecocks as possible. So I think the neat thing about this is, Wes, a couple things. One, let's talk from a Gamecock Central standpoint, since we do work at GC. If you're a Gamecock Central subscriber, one of the neat things that we're going to do is each week, we're not only going to throw up the latest podcast. So for whatever reason, you don't have iTunes, you want to listen on your computer, or you want to listen to on your phone, whatever. I mean, you can listen to this podcast pretty much however you get it. iHeart, iTunes, Spotify. I mean, you name it. It pretty much has every podcast platform possible that you need to be able to listen to it. But for Gamecock Central, we're going to embed the link each week on the Insiders Forum. But on top of that, we're also going to create a thread where you can ask Marcus questions each week. Now, obviously, depending on how many questions we get a week, there'll be some shows that we might not be able to get to every single question, but we'll do our best to be able to do that. And the beautiful thing about this, Wes, that I'm really excited about is that Marcus is going to be an open book. He's going to be an open book. And I think some people might say, okay, you hear former players come back, did he leave USC because he was mad at USC? I don't want to spoil what he's going to say in episode 1, but he's not mad at USC whatsoever. You kind of hit at it, Wes. He went through a lot of personal stuff. He went through a lot of self-reflection and being able to figure out who he was, and just didn't like the person that he was becoming because of some of the superficial stuff around him. And we've had conversations about that dating back to last year. And I think that takes, obviously you can be a woman as well, but it takes a real man to do that. So look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, everyone else thinks I'm living a life that is absolutely incredible, but I'm not happy with myself right now. So that's something that Marcus is going to get deep into episode 1. It's going to be awesome to be able to hear from him. And that first episode, it's going to be more so, our relationship that Marcus and I have had for 5.5 going on 6 years now. How I've said it multiple times, if it wasn't for Marcus Lattimore, my career in South Carolina would not have took off the way that it did. I mean, him giving me that sit-down interview, it changed my reporting career down here, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But we're going to be able to catch up with him. And I think more than anything too, Wes, he's just going to be back in front of Gamecock fans. You're going to be able to see him. You're going to be able to hear him. And we're also going to be able to have him on occasionally. He's going to hop on some different Gamecock Central shows as well. So it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of exciting things. You're going to be able to see a different perspective because, how many Gamecock podcasts are out there that you have not only a former player, but you have arguably one of the most beloved and one of the most talented Gamecock players in Marcus Lattimore, who also was part of that coaching staff. He worked behind the scenes. He was part of that player development team that Will Muschamp put together. So I'm very, very excited. I think this is going to be something Gamecock fans are going to enjoy. That first episode is going to drop the week of March 7th. So as we get closer to that date, we will give you the exact day when that's going to come out. But if you want to be able to find it, all you have to do is type in South Carolina and then BLEAV, Believe. You can also go to GamecockCentral.com. We have the direct link, so subscribe to it. We're really looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun, Wes.
Yeah, and you're also talking about Mike, in my opinion, one of the most thoughtful players in South Carolina history, as well as far as just being able to express himself and being able to put into words things that I feel like the average person just can't. Like I've always just enjoyed listening to Marcus speak on matters, and all the way going back to interviewing him when he was a high school recruit, 5-star guy, and was just sort of thrust into the limelight. As a young kid coming up at Burns. So that's going to be fun, man. I'm excited about that. If y'all haven't watched it yet, you can actually go watch the announcement video. It's on GamecockCentral.com. It's on the forum, the Insider Forum. It's on our YouTube, youtube.com/GamecockCentral. So go check that out. Marcus speaks a little bit more about what he's been up to, the plans moving forward, and you can hear that from Marcus himself. So, man, we've covered a lot of ground, Mike. I guess women's basketball is tonight at Texas A&M. That's 8:30. So I was trying to look and make sure I was right on this. I know they've already won a share. They've won the regular season SEC. I don't even know if you could really technically call it a share anymore. Like even if multiple teams win it, you hang a banner. You don't say us and them. Mm-hmm. You say our team is the SEC regular season champion. But if South Carolina wins tonight, then I believe, Mike, they will be outright champions because LSU is 2 games behind them. So if South Carolina wins, even if LSU were to win, there would be 1 game left for both teams, and South Carolina would still be 2 games. So this would lock them in as the only SEC regular season champion for this year if they win tonight.
Correct. So that's why South Carolina has already locked up the number 1 seed in the SEC tournament, because they already beat LSU. But if South Carolina were to lose their next 2 games and LSU wins their next 2, which is the only 2 conference games that both teams have, they would be co-SEC champs. So that's why you still have that co. But if they do win tonight against Texas A&M, regardless of what happens, that last regular season game of the year for South Carolina, they would be the outright SEC champs. So they play Texas A&M tonight. That's 8:30 Eastern. And then this weekend, making sure I'm losing track of the actual dates. Today's the 24th, 25th. So that'd be Sunday. They play at Ole Miss. I don't want to say that game doesn't mean anything. But I mean, shoot, if they beat Texas A&M, I mean, you're sitting real pretty going into the SEC tournament. Obviously, you win the SEC tournament, it's going to speak for itself. But South Carolina's in a real good spot right now. Really good spot to be able to get that number 1 overall seed. I really don't know. I know we have some weeks to go until we get there, but unless South Carolina had some massive collapse, losing tonight and then losing, to Ole Miss over the weekend and then getting bounced in the first round of the SEC tournament, I can't see how they're not at least the top 4 team. One of the 4 number 1 seeds, just because they've beat 11 ranked teams this year. It's absolutely insane. This is the most that an SEC team has beaten, I believe, since 2001. So it just goes to show how rare it is, but it also goes to show 2 things. One, yes, the SEC has got better. We know that. Is the SEC maybe as dominant as it's been in years past? But South Carolina, they went out and they scheduled a really difficult non-conference schedule. That gauntlet that they went through, which, things kind of washed hands a little bit because they didn't have a chance to play UConn at the end of January, but they played UConn in one of the tournaments earlier in the year. They had an opportunity to play them. So that kind of, washes that, right? So this team has been battle tested. This team has played in front of crowds that some women's basketball teams do not even produce after 3, 4, 5, 6 games combined. When you talk about that 18,000 crowd that was on hand for that Tennessee game this past weekend at Colonial Life Arena, they're so prepared. It's scary. I mean, I don't know what more they can do to get more prepared. And they've played different caliber teams. Stanford's a team that's more physical and bigger in the paint. And then they've also played some teams who are a little bit undersized and a little bit faster. So they've seen a little bit of everything. And I think the beautiful part about how talented this team is, they're so freaking deep. And just, you always knock on wood. You just try to stay healthy. I mean, that's, I think, the scariest part about it is, you have this game, you win tonight, you lock up the SEC. Do you rest players in that Ole Miss game? I don't think Don's the type of coach that will do that by any means, especially when you think about Aliyah Boston's double-double streak on the line as that continues to – I mean, she gets a double-double tonight. It extends to 20 straight double-doubles, which would be an SEC record outright. She tied the record by Sylvia Flaus this last game against Tennessee, but she has an opportunity to make some history. And this team, they're just clicking. They're clicking. The crazy thing is, Wes, they could still be better. They could still finish more layups. Don will always tell you, they've missed way too many layups sometimes, and they turn the ball way too many times in some of these games, and they're still winning. So, yeah, it's they're just a lot of fun to watch. They're a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, if they win tonight or LSU loses tonight, outright champs. Doesn't matter what happens that final game of the year.
Yeah, and I'm with you, man. I don't think it's in Dawn Staley's DNA to just go into that final game and be like it doesn't matter. Now if they can get a big lead, if they're in a situation to sort of gradually take some of the girls out and not quite risk injury as much anymore by the second half, then maybe you do it that way. But I can't see South Carolina doing anything other than foot down on the gas.
What do you do with Boston, though? What do you do with Boston? And this is obviously she gets paid to make these decisions. But if you're in a situation where you're up like 20 points in the second half against Ole Miss, do you risk putting Aliyah out there if she's, and I say closing in. I mean, all right, she needs one more rebound or whatever. I get that. But if she needs like another 4 rebounds and you don't need her, is it worth putting her out there? We know this is something that we've asked her. Not me personally, but some of the guys part of the media team. We've asked her that in some of these games. Those games still meant something. I'm not saying this one doesn't, but you have to think about it. I know I see Craig talking about Raven Johnson going down earlier in the year. I mean, all it takes. I mean, I don't care what sport it is, and I think some people, it's women's basketball. Raven Johnson's a perfect example, tearing her ACL in one of the first games of the year. All it takes is one play. And I'm not trying to speak any negative juju into existence here, but it's just the reality. And I think it's a conversation worth having because, shoot, they win tonight. That's going to be most likely a situation that occurs over the weekend. They should have no issue beating Ole Miss. They should have no issue. And if the score gets out of hand like we've seen in some of these games, especially in the first half of some of these games, that's a decision you have to make. And, I know Don keeps saying this phrase, Aliyah Boston and some of the other players, keep goodness, I can't remember the main, keep the main.
The main thing.
Keep the main thing the main thing, So the main thing is winning a national championship. So I don't know. But then again, like I'm not Dawn Staley. She's gonna very likely be not just she's going to be the first. She's very likely that she's going to be the first female to be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, both as a player and as a coach. The first female to be able to do that. I think there's only 5 or 6 men that are in the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. Is that she'd be the first female. So I have nothing compared to her in terms of her knowledge of the game, but it's something that scares you a little bit,
Ideally for them, Aliyah Boston gets 10 and 10 in the first 12 minutes of the game, and then you don't really worry about that conversation, right? Like you just sort of ease her out of there. By the way, if you go on ESPN.com, Mike, which that's where I always go for if I'm just looking for scores quickly or I want to see somebody's schedule.
You don't go to On3?
Do what?
You don't go to On3?
Well, I mean, dude, ESPN for schedules and box scores is perfect, right? So they always put, no matter the sport, they'll put like a couple little stat leaders right out beside the game, and it is comical to look at South Carolina's schedule because it has points, rebounds, assists. If you look at the last 11 games for South Carolina, the rebound column looks like a tribute to Mike's favorite place, Boston, because it's literally Boston, 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 all 11 of 11. She's led the team in rebounds and points. You've got Reset has one game where she led the team, and then Zaya Cook has one game where she led the team in points. Every other one, the last 11.
And Wes, look at the team, and look at the team she's doing it against. Because look, I'm not even going to say her name, not to be disrespectful towards her, but the idea that Aliyah Boston, the fact that there's even a conversation for some people that she doesn't deserve to be the National Player of the Year because you have a new shiny object that's shooting threes 20 feet behind the line. Well, the last time I checked, that's still worth 3 points.
I'm not going to be disrespectful as I throw shade.
Yeah, and when you're looking at the talent that Aliyah Boston's playing against, I've thought about this, whether it be Aliyah, whether it be Zaya Cook, whether it be even, I don't know, you could say Destiny Henderson. If those players are on a different team, they're probably averaging about 20 points a game each. Zaya's probably averaging close to 30 points a game. And the reason I say that is historically, even when Asia Wilson played here, Dawn Staley teams, typically, you don't have a player that's scoring 20-plus points a game, 25, it's like some of these other schools. And the reason why is, obviously there's so much talent on the court, but they're playing within the system. They're not trying to go out there and be the only person that's making plays. I truly believe Zaya Cook would be scoring close to 30 points if she's playing at a different school. No question about it. But she's doing her job within the system. Aliyah Boston's doing her job. She's doing her job from a point standpoint. So is she scoring more points than this other girl? No. But at the same time, too, the blocks, the rebounds, the defensive presence. I'd love to go look at, I believe it's Iowa State is what this girl plays on. Just the impact alone that Aliyah Boston has in comparison to not just her, but any other player in the country. So I think it's comical. And you know what it is too? And I make fun of people that play fantasy football. I call them the nerds. We've got to a point now where all the nerds just look at the stat sheet and they're like, oh, this person's better. Open your freaking eyes and watch the game. And I think I've said this before, Wes. One of my favorite, I'm trying to make sure I pull this up so I can say it right. Talib. He has one of my favorite quotes, and I'm not going to probably be able to find it right now. But basically what it says is people that enjoy dry humping stats probably enjoy reading sheet music instead of actually listening to the actual song itself. So the point being is, don't get all caught up on what you're seeing on a stat sheet. Open your freaking eyes and watch the game. It is so clear the impact that Aliyah Boston's having on this team. And I mean, there's no question she's the number one player in the country.
Yeah. So we'll do the thing at the end here where we, what is it on PTI where they correct? No, Wellbaum and what is the show?
PTI, the interruption. Kornhauser and Wilbon.
Yeah.
Corrections at the they had Stat Boy.
Yeah, Iowa, not Iowa State.
There it is. Thank you.
But otherwise, enjoyed the rant, Mike. And I enjoyed the show, man. Appreciate you taking the time. We're going to let everybody get out of here. Again, South Carolina women's basketball tonight. Baseball back in action for a 3-game series with, is it George Washington?
Yep.
Yes, George Washington this weekend at Founders Park before they really start to get rolling. Clemson series right around the corner. Oof. And then, as we said, men's basketball Saturday, women's basketball again, Ole Miss on Sunday. So plenty to look forward to on GamecockCentral.com. Mikey, I enjoyed it, man. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And be sure to go check out Colin's piece that really breaks down everything with the Ken Palm and the net rankings, because I'm sure for some of you guys, it's been a popsicle headache trying to understand how South Carolina is winning some of these games, but they're not moving up that much. He did an excellent job of explaining all that and breaking it all down. So even a simpleton like me can understand. I think you guys will enjoy it too.
Good stuff, man. Colin doing a great job over there, as always, breaking things down for us. Go check it out. For Mike, I'm Wes. We'll see you next time.